And welcome to episode 468 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Grace Winburn.
Michael O'Malley.
In today's episode, we're going to be talking about movies that we saw this week in part one. And in part two, we will be continuing our Bette and Joan series with 1931's Possessed. We're going a little out of order on the release dates, but we had to get some steamy Joan and Clark Gable action in there,
It's essential to understanding Joan as a person.
Yeah,
I think.
It's you got to do it. Those two hot and heavy in this movie. All right, well, on the whole other spectrum of the world, let's start with a relatively new release.
Speaking of heavy,
speaking of heavy, it's just got nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. I think it's Best International Feature as well. Andrew and I talked about it. It was one of our favorites out of TIFF last year, but that is The Zone of Interest. This is the latest film from Jonathan Glazer, who is famous for Birth, numerous music videos. He also did Under the Skin. This is his first movie since Under the Skin, actually. And it follows the life of, or not the life, but like a multi-month period of life for the Haas family. The patriarch of the family is Rudolf Haas, who is the commandant of Auschwitz, and his wife Hedwig, as they live their life in the in the periphery of the one of the most heinous genocides committed on Earth at Auschwitz's concentration camp. I think I know for sure Andrew and I talked a lot about this out of TIFF. It's a movie that has definitely been relatively divisive, just in how it kind of presents that text, because I think just reading the log line, you're like, oh, so I'm just going to watch this Nazi family like live their happy life right next to this concentration camp. But there's a lot more going on there, but I'll step aside because I've talked about this before. Michael, you just caught the movie, so I'm curious to hear what you thought of it.
I did, and in fact, I was kind of expecting it to be. I had heard the prevailing thing I had heard about this movie was that it was very slow and mundane. As you watch this Nazi family live their life, like literally sharing a wall with Auschwitz. And I think I was expecting it to be some sort of like John Dielman style, like, you're just watching extended, sequences of, people living their lives with the cognitive dissonance of there being, a genocide going on. But it's not that. I mean, there's like definitely a lot of the movie that is just domestic stuff going on. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff where the wife is just talking about like, here's our garden. And, that's juxtaposed with, the dad like washing blood off his boots. Well, I guess not the dad, but one of the servants / slaves, unclear to me.
I
washing
think
blood.
Yeah, Andrew and I talked about this out of the movie in Toronto. You have the Polish slaves that they've like since they've taken
they're
over
like
Poland.
locals, but they're not concentration camp.
Yeah, they work in the
worthy,
house,
I guess.
Yeah, they're like in the house working, and then you see some members from the concentration camp like on the periphery. Like there's the people who work like in the garden, and things like
you
that.
can tell because they have like their head shaved and they're wearing the uniforms of the camp. I'm sorry, my daughter is crying out of the room, but
it's a very upsetting topic. I understand.
Yeah, genocide. It's bad. But it's not quite that, because one of the things that I wasn't quite expecting was how heavy-handed this movie is. And I don't use that in a negative way necessarily, but like basically every shot of the movie includes like shots of barbed wire like behind the garden, or like you see smoke coming from the crematorium, or you hear voices or screams or things like that. And it's like really an oppressive soundscape, specifically the movie. Like there's this like Mika Levy score, which is very ominous and kind of atonal, kind of like what Under the Skin was doing a little bit. Um, but then in addition to that, you have like mixed in like it's hard to tell if it's diegetic or also meant to be part of the just atmosphere of the score slash like manipulated reality that we're seeing, because there's definitely both going on. But you just hear all the sounds, the machinery. There's this constant like churn that is like maybe the churn of the furnace or something, or supposed to be. And as a result, I found this movie like I was just on edge the entire time. Even though pointedly this movie does not show any violence on screen, and in fact, you barely see any of the actual like activities of the concentration camp. And instead you get like there's a scene where someone tries to explain like a blueprint of a new furnace that they're going to put in the camp, or you get just like the kind of like red glow of the fires like burning at night on their windows, or things like that, that are really abstracting what's happening. But mixed with like just those sounds and like the um I don't know, like the knowledge of this going on. Like I just, even when it eventually the movie gets into some more like a bit more intense elements, but especially even in the beginning, like I just found it like I was like my skin was crawling the whole time. I don't know. And that was not something I was expecting. I was expecting to be bored because I'd heard people say it's boring and that's the point. But I did not think this movie was boring in the slightest.
No, I rewatched it recently, and I remember it feeling a lot slower the first time I watched it, and then this time I was surprised with how swiftly it moves. Because I remember like the kind of parts that the path that it follows in terms of like the stuff that they're like they have like his birthday, and then her mom visits, and they have like a party. Like there's different little like moments that you follow, and I was surprised that like those are happening. So I thought I remembered more just kind of nothing moments where they're just kind of hanging around in between those things. But it was surprising just like how kind of not really quickly, but like how paced it is. Um,
Yeah, and it's really I don't it's really it does a good job of like at every moment there's some little sort of thing that your attention is supposed to be kind of like um grasped by. So even when the characters are just like walking around or like having these low key conversations, there's always like some sort of hook or something that
yeah.
is like part of it, which is not something that I would have expected of like a slow cinema, kind of endurance test, which is I don't know. And maybe people are just talking about that in the context of the Academy Awards, which I mean, this is a fairly abstract movie for like a Best Picture nominee, and so maybe that's what people mean. But anyway, I like this movie.
Mhm.
I I have questions about like some of the things it's trying to do, because I like some of the things it's trying to do are very obvious. Like obviously the dissonance of like these Nazis who like have to do a lot of work to act as if they are just living a normal middle class life, um, in the belly of a genocide. Like there's this scene where they're trying to like they're like playing in the river and they're downstream from where they're like um dropping like the ashes of like the concentration camp victims, and you just you see like the father like just take his kids out of the water, and then they're like just scrubbing in the bath next, and then you
Mhm.
see they are just playing in the pool the next time.
Mhm.
um and there's just like a lot of so like the movie's very clear about like the intense amount of work it takes to have this sort of like um comfortable existence while this genocide is going on. But there's also stuff going on later in the movie that I'm not 100% sure about. Like there's these like thermal camera, like black and white thermal camera sequences that I guess are like a Polish girl that I think otherwise barely see. Like I think she plays piano in one scene as well.
Mhm.
But otherwise, we don't really see this Polish girl. But she seems to be like leaving food for people, maybe in the concentration camps. I'm not 100% sure what's going on there, except to just show that like not everyone was pretending like this didn't exist. There was like
Well
an element of resistance, maybe. I don't know.
well, during those scenes also you have generally have the father telling it's to a degree a fairy tale, like those sections specifically, because
Yeah,
he's telling the tale of like Hansel and Gretel while that's taking place. And like yeah, I don't have a firm understanding of what's going on there, but the way I kind of interpreted it this second time is that like she's in thermal, like in this thermal vision whenever she's like out around the camp and stuff like that. And the only time she's not in thermal is when like I think one of the last times you see her, she like returns home, and when she's
right.
inside the home, she like returns to you're seeing things normally,
Yeah,
and
and
they
there's
kind
a
of
really great scene where she like picks out it's like a sheet of music and she starts playing the music and there's like subtitles like that are not for spoken text or
Mhm,
spoken dialogue in the movie, which I guess are supposed to be the lyrics. And I think that this music like belonged to one of the people who became like a camp like prisoner.
mhm,
And so it's like this really haunting moment. Like you said, it's like one of the last times that we see this girl is she's like kind of very slowly with like one finger, like picking out this tune on the piano that is from like an artifact of like someone who is maybe alive, maybe probably dead in the concentration camp. Um, so like, yeah, I'm not 100% sure what's going on there, but it is very striking.
mhm.
And then the end of the movie does some really kind of interesting things too, which like it's it's sort of a spoiler, but it's not really because describing it doesn't capture what the experience of it is like. Like
Yeah.
you see like a flash forward to the museum that Auschwitz has become, um, in like contemporary day, and you see like the cleaning staff like washing the windows that are in front of like the big piles of shoes,
Mhm.
and you see like them sweeping the floors and stuff like that, and it's like bookended by a shot that seems to indicate that the that Haas himself is like foreseeing this future maybe, and I'm not 100% sure what's going on with that either, but it is like a very striking way to end the movie, I think.
I
um
for that I really like that both times I've seen it, because it to me, you mentioned the scene in the river. Like he's constantly like he's a is an extremely evil, like evil person, because
Yeah,
he's
of
actively
anyone, he is the most
yeah.
of a participant in this genocide.
I mean, you have a scene early in the movie where he's, in this meeting actively choosing how to better optimize the furnace to, kill Jewish people.
Right.
So like he's just an evil person. But he's still like, like the whole a lot of this movie is like them trying to like create, to compartmentalize and create this distance from the acts that they're perpetrating.
Yeah, and in
Because
fact, like a plot, like a late breaking plot in the movie is he gets reassigned, and that's a crisis for the family. In the same way that, like, almost in like a sitcom or something, like, oh, dad got a job in San Francisco, and now he's got to move. Like,
yeah,
it's a
but
weird, like, dissonant little family drama that I think is really
well,
effective.
we can talk about the wife in a second because she's a whole other thing.
Yeah,
But the ending of the movie to me, I see it as like evil of that stature you can only push down so much. Like at some point it's gonna like erupt, and like to me it's kind of like he's pushed down this evil like more and more and more, that he literally becomes physically ill from like just what he's like pushed down and done.
yeah. I
That's
saw a lot of
which is why he
comparisons.
just starts vomiting, at the end of the movie.
I saw a lot of comparisons to the end of The Act of Killing, which a similar thing happens, albeit in like a documentary context.
Hmm. So that's kind of how I see that. No, the the interesting thing also is just like the what happens with this family. So Haas, um, he's hanged. They kill him when the Americans overtake the camps. I can't remember if the Americans overtook these camps or if the Soviets did. Um,
I
but
think
when
Americans were Auschwitz, maybe.
okay, yeah, when they take over the
I might be
camps,
misremembering.
whenever they take over the camps, like he's hung and killed. Like he's dead. Um, but his wife, uh,
Lives into like
like
the 80s. There's like a title card, right?
yeah,
Like in
she
America.
yeah, she remarries, moves to America, and lives until like her 90s or something. Um, and that's what and you have Sandra Hüller, who I don't think we mentioned before. Sandra Hüller, just fantastic actress, is playing the wife, and she's such a like I say, he's a pure evil character, but she's the more fascinating character because she's like the ancillary to the evil because her whole focus is to have this perfect house and this perfect life and this perfect garden and this perfect family. And like as you mentioned, like he gets reassigned and she's like, I don't give a shit. Like you can go wherever, like we're staying in this house. Like I've built this house. Like I want this. And so she's fascinating because she's not actively taking part in what's happening over the wall, but she's completely willing to let that happen because in return she's getting what she wants at most out of life.
Right.
Um
Well, and in fact, like this like life that she has is not possible without what is going
mhm,
on over the wall. Like they're all sleeping in twin beds because it's not actually their home. It was like a home that was stolen from whoever they took the land from, and like this entire like homestead feeling, like how oh, this is now my house and I want this homestead that I've built myself. Like that couldn't have happened without the genocide. And it like honestly really chillingly reminded me of like in Palestine. I mean, the same thing happened
mhm,
with like the settlement of Palestine where they were like, the forcible evacuation of all the Palestinians, and then a bunch of people came and settled their homes, and they were
yeah.
like furnished homes still. Um,
Yeah, it's a very prescient time to
yeah,
be watching this movie and like the concepts it's kind of grappling with. Um, the last thing I kind of want to talk about with this movie is so when I saw it recently, there was a Q&A afterwards with this German film history professor, and he opened it with a really kind of fascinating discussion about um, you know the Holocaust as entertainment. It's not like, a lot of movies you can look back at like Holocaust movies, whether it's like Schindler's List to Life is Beautiful or even farther back, and like it's not entertainment, but like just the fact that like movies like generally their operative mode is entertainment. Like you're supposed to be engaged in it at the same time. And so it's kind of like how do you handle something as horrific and mind-numbingly awful as the Holocaust and like capture it with like film. And this movie is such a I don't know, like I feel like does like is able to capture it in a not fun way. Like I can't like sit here and tell you like, oh, this is a fun movie. It's not a fun movie. But I feel like it kind of captures the the insurmountable like just like insurmountable like hatred and evil and um like of all of it in a way that is not you know there's no you're not getting your hand held during it. Not that there's just like there's a lot of unrelenting pieces of Holocaust filmmaking in the past. Um, but this one seems, at least, especially on a narrative level, seems to be grappling that in a way that the only other comparison I feel like I can make, he made the comparison to Son of Saul, that the movie the first person perspective
yeah,
movie that
the
came out a
single
couple years ago.
take movie. A lot of people didn't like that
Um,
movie for the same reasons of like Schindler's List and
yeah.
stuff.
The other one and I still like contend this is the most like every person in the world should have to watch this movie, and that's Elaine Renee's Night and Fog,
Oh yeah.
which is just kind of a like no hold back look at, looking at what was happening then compared to what was happening now, which was it was made in the 60s, I believe.
Yeah, because a
Um,
lot of the footage is of like the abandoned
yeah,
camps.
and
But
so yeah.
there's a ton of discussion about that sort of thing, like the entertainment value or the filmmaking style, and I never know quite what to do with those discussions because I mean I would not call Schindler's List a fun movie, but it
Mhm.
does use conventional style,
Yeah.
which is associated with entertainment, and so like the scene that I think Michael Haneke hated was the shower scene where they think that they're going to be gassed and then they get water thrown on them or whatever, um,
Mhm.
instead, and I don't know. Like, I don't know. How do you if you just associate film technique with entertainment, then it means that you can't make a film about the Holocaust. Like, if film is reducible to simply these are carnival tricks,
Mhm.
then you could never deal with anything serious.
I
And
know.
and
Yeah.
I agree that there's like kitschy and disrespectful ways to deal with it too. But like and maybe that is the case that but I mean like even like a film like Zone of Interest, like the score is used to pique your attention and
Yeah.
things like that like I wouldn't call entertainment, but they are techniques that can be utilized for entertainment in other contexts. And I I don't know, like I mean I think that is an open question with a film like this. And that maybe the film itself is making is can a film even depict evil in a narrative context? Um,
Yeah. I mean, I pose that not saying that like I believe one way or the other, because yeah, it's you know, I think filmmaking techniques are manipulating, and I you don't say that in a negative way,
right.
like the manipulation works,
And even in a
some
documentary context.
yeah, like that's
Yeah.
just filmmaking in general is manipulation, and you elicit a reaction from it. I mean, there's as much manipulation in filmmaking techniques in this movie as like if you were watching like a Mission Impossible movie, like
Right.
that's just like
Or like
how.
Skinamarink. If you saw Skinamarink earlier this year, like that is a movie that is like at least as abstract as this movie and does like soundscapey things like that. But obviously the point of Skinamarink is to be like a thrill
Mhm.
ride and to entertain. But in terms of like convention and narrative abstraction, like it's the same level as something like Zone of Interest. And I don't know, like I just don't know how to deal with the discussion about finding inherent meaning in certain film techniques because like I see the argument, but I also if you take that argument to its logical conclusion, where are we left with filmmaking as an art form?
Yeah. I think it's a very complicated like thing to suss through, but
Yeah.
it's kind it to me to me the real takeaway, like my final thought on the movie is like the thing that I thought about most from out of this movie was it has such a laser focus on like you don't want to take away like the magnitude of this event on Jewish people.
Right.
Like the Holocaust is directly linked to that. But the movie also, I think, and that's why earlier I said is prescient because it's also showing how just evil in general can be compartmentalized and ignored, um, by people if said evil is, profiting them in some fashion.
Right. Right. Oh, by the way, it was the Red Army that liberated Auschwitz.
That's what I thought
Yeah,
because Poland's on that side of the.
it is. Yeah, I had mixed it up with another one.
Yeah. Soviets took out the Nazis in Berlin also, but we like to forget that. So
Yeah, thanks communism for
yeah,
winning World War II.
yeah, yeah. But Zone of Interest, I highly recommend seeing it. I think it's just kind of like we've talked about. I think it's essential movie to see, to kind of grapple with, to think about. Um, yeah, I think it's very well made. I like it, even though it's not fun and can be
I
classified as boring.
agree. Yeah.
Well, cool. All right, we're gonna stop talking about the Holocaust, and Grace, we're gonna turn it over to you to brighten things up with some John Waters.
Sure, for something a little more pastel, a little more polyester. I watched Polyester this week. I picked it up from the library. It was one of those that just sort of caught my eye. It is certainly much more lighthearted and fun, trashy and campy, very, sets a mood and gives you something melodramatic, something over the top, and still something very funny and real. I just really enjoyed this. I really like John Waters. Sensibly, I feel like he speaks to me and, my own personal aesthetics and aestheticism. At this point, I've seen Crybaby and Hairspray, so to see something that's not a musical, I mean, like, there are musical numbers, but more of a straight movie. I mean, not straight, but
I was gonna say I don't think John Waters can
he's
make a
never
straight
made a
movie.
straight movie in his life.
Yeah.
That's like, I don't want him to, hit us with like libel or something for saying that, or slander, for putting that out there. But it's hilarious. It's well acted. It's very well shot. Like, it's so interesting. He's the Pope of trash, and like, what's trashy about this? I mean, like, there's the smell-o-vision. It's odorous, like, but still, like,
Can you explain what the smell-o-vision is for people who are unfamiliar? Because it's kind of awesome.
it is scratch and sniff technology. It's it's not two-dimensional. It's not three-dimensional coming out at you. It's smell-o-vision. So you are experiencing the smells that Francine is smelling throughout the movie, whether it be the perfume on her husband's clothes, the smell of the sleazy motel, the smell of the pizza, the smell of his farts. Like, you just get a sense of this world, and you are fully immersed in Francine Fishpaw's Polyester Playhouse. And it's a card with smells, perfumed onto it, that you will scratch and then smell in accordance with the number that comes on the screen. There's a whole sequence in the beginning that demonstrates this groundbreaking, incredible technology that we have perfected for viewing of this movie. But please keep in mind that sometimes, things just stink. And that's always the, like, tongue-in-cheek, like, not everybody's gonna like this, like, we're doing something different, controversial, and to more serious folks, this is trashy. This movie stinks. But
I feel like we should bring smell-o-vision back. Like, that should.
We
Who
gotta.
needs the 3D and the IMAX and all that crap? Like, let's
That's
get
what
some
VR
smell-o-vision.
is a wasted opportunity. You're already putting something over your face. Your nose could be included in that.
Yeah.
It'd be like the Dune sort of, like,
Yeah.
nose. But there's always a smell to movies. There's the popcorn, someone's vape, the person in front of you's BO. Like, there's a scent to movies. So
As
You have
John
such a
Waters intended.
Yeah, you have such a romance to the movie watching experience.
what can I say? But it's what if I really love this movie. I just, like, you drill down to it. It's romance, divine, incredible, incredible, incredible. What can you say about Divine? She is divine. She is divine cinema. This gorgeous woman, heart of gold, with, like, a real inner beauty that informs the outer beauty. And she is this poor, put upon wife who suffers injustice after injustice from her own family and flesh and blood. Her husband, Elmer, a sleazy, two-timing adulterer who just so happens to be a very successful businessman who runs a porn theater downtown, an X-rated movie theater. And he cheats on Francine with his secretary. Her daughter, Lulu, is a trashy, fast girl who is independent and promiscuous, but also mature enough to make certain decisions. Like she gets pregnant and she's going to have an abortion. How do you like that? That's so controversial, but interestingly empowering. And, thank goodness that she's able to do it, or, but not by her mother's standards, because her mother is a good Christian woman and prays to God and, says her Bible and everything. And then her son Dexter is a drug huffing foot fetishist who enacts his violence on the poor, unsuspecting insteps of local Baltimore women. He gets rehabilitated. Lulu goes to a Christian girls' camp where she has a miscarriage and sees the light. And the family's able to rebuild after Elmer's infidelities. And then Divine finds love, or Francine finds love. And, it's beautiful. Like, is she not deserving of that love? Is she not, worthy to be loved? Is it just because of her? They constantly reference her weight as like the big reason why, she's just the worst. But she is just a loving mother trying to keep her family together. And then, decides to also choose herself and her own happiness and her own love. Wonderful. I'm so glad that I saw it. I'll add that to the list of, another reason why to love John Waters, someone who plays with, these themes of sexuality, identity, politics, right versus left, and also like plays on, I think, what was he raised Catholic? Like, I mean, growing up in Baltimore, the Catholic Church is a big presence there.
He's got a lot of Catholic imagery. Is it Female Trouble with the crab? And
no, that's Multiple Maniacs with the
Multiple
crab.
Maniacs. That's right. Yeah, that takes place in that movie. Also has like a scene with don't they like have sex with the priest or something in that movie?
I think,
maybe.
Yeah. But yeah, there's like a lot of he brings, there's a lot of like, religion, if religion is, I don't really need, should I do that, and say like, religion, you're supposed to be good, but then, like, how good are you if, your faith is persecuting others or harmful or hurtful? And, just like playing on, just because you're religious doesn't mean you're a good person, or maybe because you are, like, you don't deserve this sort of treatment. It's just, it's a very mouthy movie. I love the dialogue. It's hilarious. And just the look of it is, really sets like such a beautiful mood, while still having like a very gritty and real feeling to it, a melodramatic, soap operatic, but very real. Love it. Polyester.
Awesome.
Check it out from your library.
Check it out.
Not so abstract or esoteric as Zone of Interest. This is what you watch after Zone of Interest to lift your spirits. And, you're able to answer that question like, are movies meant to entertain? And yes, this one is, at least. So let it entertain you.
That's good. That's good. That's, that's what you got to do. You got to find a movie with some smell-o-vision.
I really wish. I was just watching it at home and I'm like, well, I guess all I have are like my cats to smell,
Yeah.
Or,
to
like,
be honest, thank God that's the John Waters movie that has smell-o-vision. Can you imagine Pink Flamingo's smell-o-vision?
Oh God, Jesus.
love that.
Would just be. I don't know how you could do that.
Smell-o-vision and 3D. Whoa, just attack your senses. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. Michael, take us home. You got one more.
Yeah.
Or actually, 1, 2, 3 more.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of the communists, I watched the Billy Wilder movie 1, 2, 3, which he made right after The Apartment. I think The Apartment's 60 and this movie was 61, maybe, or something like it's something like that. It was like 1 year after, and this is set in Berlin. right before the wall went up, and literally right before, like he was filming the movie as the wall was going up, and it ruined part of the production of his movie. Because the whole premise of the movie is that in Berlin you have this really wacky kind of city where there's capitalism and communism like in the same city, and you can like walk between the two regions and things like that. And it stars uh, an amazing James Cagney as this Coca-Cola manager. He's like trying to bring Coca-Cola to the Eastern Bloc, basically, and so he's like having to negotiate with these communists how to get Coca-Cola into East Germany and beyond. At the same time, like his higher up in the Coca-Cola company has a daughter that is visiting Berlin and is meant to be looked after by James Cagney's character. And this daughter is like an adult daughter, like maybe her 20s or something, but she's meant to be fairly young. And she's just like this very impulsive person. And she ends up falling in love with and getting engaged to a communist. Um, and there's this great line when she walks in and James Cagney's like, "Where you been?" And she's like, "Oh, I met the most wonderful man." And like he meets him and he's like, "This man's a communist." She says, "No, he said he was a Republican." And like, so the movie is like that situation happens. And then before the parents come from Atlanta to visit their daughter, he's got to figure out, oh, how do I fix this situation? And make it so that I'm going to be able to get that sweet promotion to the whole European, you know, region to be in charge of that, while also making sure that this daughter is okay. And the whole thing is very fast. Like it is just a relentlessly paced movie. The dialogue is going really like a mile a minute. There's like so many jokes. It's really entertaining. James Cagney is like, he's like putting his whole body into this thing. But also there's like a lot of really great fun performances. The guy who plays the communist dude is very funny, because eventually in the movie they decide like you got to pretend to be a capitalist, so that your like soon to be in-laws will not like murder you on the spot when they come and find you engaged to their daughter. And like there's this very long sequence of him like just having trouble with like all of these like American like rules and like bourgeois concepts and whatever. Like he doesn't want to get rid of his party card. He's like, it's paid up through December, and won't like doesn't want to let it go. And so it's like very funny. It is also very interesting as like a time capsule. Like it is like mid like Khrushchev thaw, right? And so like there's like all sorts of parades celebrating like Khrushchev and like the ways and like the Coca-Cola company is like cautiously interested in like what is this going to mean. And so there's like it's like a time capsule of a very specific moment in time, like pre-Bay of Pigs, like I don't even know, had the Cuban Revolution finished by six? I guess it had, but whatever the case, like before the wall goes up in Germany, like it's just a really interesting moment that like Billy Wilder captured in the screwball comedy. And he's obviously sympathetic to the Americans, and like there are a lot of jokes at the expense of like the communists. Like there's a car chase later on where the communist car is like falling apart and stuff, and some of that's a bit hacky. But there's also quite a bit of like poking fun at like the kind of capitalist impulses as well, in like the Coca-Cola company. And so I don't think it's like entirely like just like a a CIA asset type movie. Although there's like a little bit of that element to it. But I think most of all, it's just fun. It's got great jokes. It's got great performances. Also, a small tie-in to this movie and our ongoing series. But Joan Crawford apparently was displeased with this movie because she had recently become a spokesperson for Pepsi Cola. And so she like called up Billy Wilder and made him put a few references to Pepsi in the screenplay. So there's our segue.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Joan. Pepsi is not great. So
It is not.
it's okay. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to swig a Pepsi and talk about Joan Crawford and Clark Gable and having a nice little affair in part 2 with 1931's Possessed after this. And we're back with part 2 of episode 468 of Cinematary. In this part, we're going to be continuing our Bette and Joan series with 1931's Possessed. Movie is directed by Tennessee's own Clarence Brown.
Yeah, I
Knoxville,
noticed that.
Tennessee's own Clarence Brown, from a script by Lenore J. Coffey. Film stars Joan Crawford, Clark Gable, and Wallace Ford. A Pennsylvania woman leaves her small town suitor and becomes a rich New York lawyer's mistress. According to information in the MPAA PCA collection at the AMPAS library, Colonel Jason Joy and Joseph Breen of the Hayes office were upset when the picture was released because they had not seen a copy of the completed script prior to production. In a December 15, 1931 letter from Joy to Breen, Joy stated, quote, "The philosophy of this one is wrong. For some reason, we did not have the script and did not get in a crack before the picture was finished. This cannot happen again and was the chief reason the code was amended, making submission of scripts mandatory rather than optional in the past."
Damn, we have this movie single-handedly to blame.
It's just Joan and Clark, their magnetism and electricity. It's really their fault.
Yeah.
Way to go, guys.
Although most territories accepted the picture without elimination, some did require the elimination of various lines of dialogue deemed objectionable. A June 1932 letter in the MPAA-PCA file from Jack Warner complained that MGM was, quote, "getting away with things in their films, such as Possessed, with which other studios could not." Lenore Coffey, who wrote the script, said she was assigned to write the film by Irving Thalberg, who instructed the writer to give Joan Crawford, quote, "a new personality to play after years of depicting flappers." Quote, "I gave Joan Crawford a whole new personality. It was a very successful picture. Thalberg said to me once, 'The only trouble is she's been playing it,' as in the same character, ever since." And the only review I could find was from the New York Times in 1931 that said, through Clarence Brown's able direction, handsome settings, and a fairly well-written script, Possessed is a gratifying entertainment. The familiar theme of a small-town factory girl who becomes the mistress of a wealthy New Yorker is set forth with new ideas which result in surprises, if not in a measure of suspense. On that note, let's talk a little bit about Possessed. Grace, why don't you get anything kind of to set the table with just in terms of Joan Crawford and Clark Gable's? This is one of many collaborations that they had.
Yes, both on and off set.
That's clear.
That's very clear. They have a
Wonder if they were ever late to rehearsal.
That probably was probably
Say
taken
maybe late
from
to
a
dinner
rehearsal.
a couple times, but so let's see. This is 1931. So at this point in Joan's career, her marriage to Hollywood royalty Douglas Fairbanks Jr. is sort of on the outs. It's suggested that the two of them have outside relationships, but they look to be, they were the Hollywood it couple. So her having a relationship with a bit actor at this point. Clark Gable had been playing bounders and rounders and cads up until this point. In fact, he was a little nervous to take on this role as this wealthier, more powerful man might alienate that fan base. That's wacky, but so to sort of, I guess, like slum it with an actor a little, beneath her station as such a Hollywood queen who has made her mark as a flapper girl, a dancer, to try and switch to something more serious and then to have that affair. But she's a passionate woman and a beautiful woman, but that's really it.
I mean, Clark Gable's pretty hot, so I get it.
He's so handsome.
Yeah, not slumming it too bad with Clark.
Yeah.
There are, I guess, there might be worse, but this movie was also based off a play originally from
1920.
1920, The Mirage, but the writing of Lenore Coffey and Clarence Brown's own sort of more hands-on approach basically like obliterated it. They pulled out something completely different. They made Marion much more sympathetic and Al just the worst, most grating person ever. So it's you champion Marion and her escape from this life.
Can I just say real quick that one of the funniest parts of the whole movie is one of the first times you meet Al, and he's getting mad at her for like sipping on champagne and talking to Wally or whatever the hell, and getting home late, and like he's like angry at her, and then Joan Crawford's gonna like insult him, and she's like you, and then there's like a cut down to the turnips that her mother is holding, and she goes, you turnip.
Well, and there's a good callback later on when she meets Clark Gable, where they're talking about vegetables, and she's like, "You weren't thinking of turnips, were you?"
I mean, it's absolutely eviscerating, but yeah, no, it's her rebrand. By the end of her marriage with Douglas Fairbanks, she takes up with Franchot Tone, and he's the much more serious actor. And so, like you said, that she's still playing this actress. She draws a little on her past as a down and out girl who moves to the big city and who, at her core, engages in sex work to get ahead and get the life that she wants. This is a very, pro-worker, blue-collar worker movie, and that speaks to Clarence Brown's sensibilities as a director. But this is Joan giving a performance, and I think she does a great job. She's wonderful. I think I'm a really big Joan Crawford fan at this point.
Yeah.
Safe to say, but
yeah, it's this one, it's kind of it's funny to step back with this one compared to Mildred Pierce, which we did for the last episode, because this is like if oh shoot, what's the daughter in Mildred Pierce, like Veda, like this
Veda.
Is you gotta figure that like if Veda saw this this movie, it's kind of just like, oh, so you were a little promiscuous in your age, back then also, like
it's okay when you do it, but
yeah, it's like it's kind of like
I learned it from watching version. You.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, and so but no, it's I think like just kind of as like this very like classic Hollywood romance. It's a pretty fun movie. Once she like gets into the New York life portion of it, it is like there's just this like clear, like it's very clear that these two are like regularly having sex because there's like palpable energy between the two of them. There's a scene where they arrive an hour late to the party and she fixes his tie because it's like messed up, and they're just like, oh, what are you doing an hour late? They just kind of look at each other and just like, you're like, gotta love. That's probably the stuff that the Hays office is not.
Yeah, Jack Warner's sitting fuming in a theater, like, why couldn't I do that? No.
the Hays office is not happy there. But I think also just like just the kind of freedom she has between the different relationships, and just kind of how she interacts with anybody in the movie is kind of very like it's a movie that's very flippant to the Hays Code at this period of time. I think like the last 20 minutes or so, I mean, we can talk about it later, but like the last 20 minutes or so of this movie, when it she's having to break his heart, and then he's trying to win an election, like just a great little 20-minute span. I saw people kind of on Letterboxd kind of going, oh, it's a very contrived ending, and you're like, yeah, I mean, sure, but like it's a great ending.
Yeah, I thought it was very sweet.
She's running away. She's running away, crying in the rain from everybody else, and then he runs up behind her and hugs her, and
passionately
kiss in the
kiss her.
they kiss in the
Music
movie, and so like
swells. It's beautiful.
There's like a
You're like,
great
how
last
that
line too. What is it that he says at the end? It's like a
He
really
says,
good.
"If I win, it'll be with you, but if I lose, it'll still be with you."
Yeah,
And
it's
he
good.
chooses her no matter what. Like, how
yeah.
beautiful, how
How
romantic. Like,
how else do you want the movie to end?
oh,
Like, come
what?
He
That
on.
she just, like, throws up
declares
arms?
his
She's
prison
sad. She loved him. Like, why does she have to be sad? Why can't she have her happy ending? And why can't he?
Yeah.
You
he
know, he can
declares his
still be a good
prison
man.
abolition platform and then declares his love for her. Like it's perfect.
How amazing. I mean, like, in all aspects, how incredibly progressive. I mean, that we get something pro-sex, pro-prison abolition, pro-social reform, pro-working class, like, unbelievable. And that's what they try to censor, and it's like, still trying to do that now in 2024. Anyways.
Yeah, I there was a review on Letterboxd for the movie that I liked that was just Clark Gable really out there advocating for the abolition of prisons and poverty in 1931.
Respect.
It
And,
is
like,
funny that like how
belittling the League of
much
Nations.
can you give your position on the League of it is funny like how much airspace is given to him just like stating policy positions, and I wonder how much of that was signaling like about like, oh, this is a guy who like understands like the needs of working people, and like I don't know, like maybe any sort of lingering like class conflict in your mind would have been like put at ease. It's like, oh, this guy, he's not just some rich asshole who's gonna use his political position to take advantage of poor people. It's not like all the king's men or something like that.
Mhm.
Um anyway, I just thought that was interesting how specific that they allowed him to get with this politics.
Yeah, it was
I'm used to like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington sort of stuff that's like very studiously like, I wonder what the politics are.
yeah. No, I will say though, it's a movie that kind of takes a while to get in. You start out where she's with Al, who is just kind of a frankly just kind of a bumpkin.
A
He's
turnip.
trying
He's a turnip. That's a great
Too
word for
deeply
it.
he's a turnip.
rooted, and
And so it kind of takes a while to kind of get into there, and then like you have her kind of like getting into the New York world, but there's Wally, whatever the hell he does, who's just kind of like, you gotta find a man. That's how you women rise
stay
above.
away from mine. It was
Yeah,
very. I was like, oh, there's a little competition there. Interesting.
yeah. And then
Wally's a unique character, but
she's like, nah, man. I'm gonna look. Clark Gable just walked in. I'm gonna go find him. And it's such a great. They're having dinner, and I forgot the specific line where he's just kind of like, you kind of just do whatever you want, and it like cuts to, you know, what is it, like a number of months later when they're
oh, it's
clearly like,
years.
or years later when they're like
Yeah.
You watch her
together.
pull the calendar away, and then that's like a nice visual. Like, Clarence Brown,
Great
clearly,
cut.
like, silent movie film director. He's got that engineering background, and then he like gives you something interesting to look at, to watch the years go by, and like more and more jewelry.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
No, it's a great that the cut from her at dinner with Clark Gable to the as you described, the calendar is some good movie moves right there.
Another incredible movie move toward the beginning of the movie is when she's waiting on what's his name and by the train, and like all of the train cars are all going by, and you can
Mhm.
see all these windows, and she's watching all these different people
Yeah.
like living with different types of lives, and then including a woman like semi undressed, which I was a little bit surprised too. I think that was another like the Hays Code fuming moment.
Jack Warner's like, I want half naked women in my movies.
But like it's a really beautiful little moment too of yearning, because Joan Crawford's character is just like sitting there like basically waiting for this opportunity, and all she can do is like watch all these other people live lives. And I don't know, like it was like a real movie magic sort of moment there too, where I I thought that was great.
Yeah.
I really like that. It was sort of like, yes, it's a train. It's the progress. It, takes you from these small towns to the big city. But the peeking in, it sort of felt like window shopping to me. Like she can like look in and see what life she'll choose. But then it also sort of like, I thought a million things about this scene. Like, so I thought about that. And then I thought, I also read about how this sort of like, is an example of like what, you know, there's like a class consciousness and a working class consciousness, and especially how it has the African Americans as servile. You know, they're setting the table, they're ironing the clothes, and then there's the white leisure class that's like benefiting off of that. So that also that what I read from a Clarence Brown scholar, Gwenda Young, just she dances around that sort of topic, and I'm sort of butchering the interpretation, but this I thought that was interesting. So as progressive as it is, it sort of draws a line in the sand and the like in the racial lines of the working class. But that long that long lingering shot on the couple as they romance and dance, that's what we linger with, like that's what we stay with, and that to me was like that's what she is longing for, like that's what she chooses. And then to meet Wally, a hell of an introduction. You know, you're looking the wrong way, you should be inside looking out. You belong on this side of the tracks, maybe, so to speak. So, but such a, you know, interesting way to direct a scene, you know, to, you know, move the camera. But sorry, my cat, I'm having a moment with my child. My cat is yelling right now.
These damn kids.
These darn kids. But I did, that's just so innovative and so interesting, and just speaks to the ingenuity of Clarence Brown. Just want to give him some attention.
Yeah, like I think this is, I think, the first movie I've seen by Clarence Brown, and my impression was always of him as kind of like a workman type director. And I mean, I guess that can still be the case while also having like, you know, kind of a visual panache. But like this was a more visually stimulating movie than like I think I had assumed of Clarence Brown's like output. And yeah, I got to give him credit. What did the New York Times say? His able direction.
Evil direction.
You're like, okay, thank you. He knows how to do it.
He can do it. Yeah, he's not bad,
He's
but
able to direct.
Yeah. I mean, that's a fair assessment. There's a lot of people. They should bring that back into the vernacular with reviews today.
like,
Or and it's opposite, the unable direction.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they should just do that. That'd be great. No.
It's just
What, you know, this I saw an interesting kind of note about, because this, like you talked about at the beginning, like Clark Gable is relatively unknown, you know, when he starts, and pretty much it's like he's the unknown, Joan Crawford's the star, and by the end of their run in movies together, it's like, yeah, he's much more like he's you know, pulling, you know, Hollywood stardom, and she's still a star, but it's kind of, she's definitely going into that next period that we talked a lot about in the last episode with Mildred Pierce, where she's kind of having to reinvent herself. And so it's kind of, you know, it's kind of interesting as we go through this series. You know, I think we kind of got a similar look with Now Voyager with Bette Davis, and we'll go back to Betty in the next episode with All About Eve. But I think, you know, in the context of the series, it's interesting to kind of see not only like the transition of them as actors, but also the transition just in terms of, for lack of a better phrase, like their standing in Hollywood. That as with any kind of movie star like that kind of ebbs and flows. And so it's kind of interesting to see that happen through this series of movies that we're gonna watch ahead of Baby Jane.
Was there like I mean, is there sort of like an intentionally meta, you know, idea with like Joan Crawford playing a character who is elevated from like a kind of lower class, like that being the movie that was chosen to kind of like, this is the movie's going to break her out of her old typecast. Like that's kind of an interesting, like in the long view of her career, that's like interesting that the character arc of the person she's playing like dovetails with like her career in this point.
That's a really interesting point. Okay, that like fired off a bunch of things in my mind. Really, I think that what makes this so strong and defines the turning point in her career, yes, I mean, like, yes, it does have everything to do with the part itself. I don't think that she was necessarily given the part because she had lived the part, but I think that because she had lived the part, she was able to deliver a real authenticity to the role that made it the standout that it is.
Yeah.
I think that if she'd been given something else, like she could be, I find Joan to be the kind of actress that can only live her truth as a character if she's lived that truth as a character, and like that's her way into these characters. And then I think, again, one thing that really sort of clicked with me in this viewing was that, okay, she made her mark as a dancer, as a flapper girl, so she's used to communicating with a more physicality, and so there's that like realness to delivering whatever the dance is, the romance is, versus Bette as an actress who's a stage actress who can convey with her voice, and she comes in, and then like Joan's around for the switch from silent to talkies too. But anyways, I just, oh gosh, I lost what the question was, but
I think you answered it. I just asked like,
okay.
was there like an intentionally, meta narrative going on here with like the star arriving at a different stage in her career in a movie in which her character does the same thing?
Okay, yes. So then, yes, I did answer that. But then, yes, another thing is that I do feel like she could have been given like serious script after serious script that is meant to like catapult her into that next phase, and that she wouldn't be able to deliver this same level of performance unless it was similar to her struggles, or similar to something that she just like was acutely aware of, or like in proximity to, or had happened to her. And I think that's also kind of why she sort of struggles in like other roles, where she tries to deliver a sort of elevated or elegant woman role, and why they sort of fail, because a lot of people say things like, that's still just Joan Crawford. And it's like, yeah, because that is still just Joan playing this part that she's given instead of living a truth. Like acting is so interesting, and how do we dissect that? But
Yeah, well, like this is definitely, and we talked about it a little bit in the last episode. Like this is also very much like a movie star role. Like you need a movie star in this because you kind of need like you got there's a handful of scenes in this where you kind of just need her to like chew up the space, you know? Like you
right.
think of the scene when she breaks up with Clark Gable, like you got to have her there, like, really going for it, like, just eating up that scene. Like that's all about her just eating up the scene. Similar to like the moment at the very end at the political rally, even early on, uh, in the scene when she's gonna like when she decides to like leave home, like she has to just kind of eat that scenery. And like you think about it, not that like just a more normal actor wouldn't be able to handle that, but you kind of need, like, I don't know, like yes, it's kind of going, yeah, she's doing Joan Crawford, but I don't see that necessarily as a negative. Like I think that's the power of the movie star, and I think maybe like I'm more open to that now because we have zero movie stars.
I was
like
actually thinking about that. Like
you
a
know
movie like this really its entertainment value is in watching the stars, and there's a certain type of movie that really struggles to be made anymore because of the dearth of these sorts of like screen presences.
Yeah, like I think of it's a very funny like like where it came from, but if you've never seen Matt Damon on Hot Ones, he has this scene. It's I know it's funny, but he has this part where he's like pretty much he's asked, you know, why are like the kind of Goodwill Hunting, like kind of mid-level middle class movies, like not like, you know, movies today has to be either like gigantic Avengers, you know, something like that, or like super small scale indie. Like there's no middle class movie anymore. And he gives this very nuanced answer of just like that. There's like the paraphrase is pretty much the landscape does not um really, you know, allow that in today's, you know, Hollywood. And like that's what's great about this period, because this isn't a you know, capital A class A movie. It's not a it's a very middle class movie that it's completely built on. You need Joan Crawford to be a star, and then you need Clark Gable to rise to that, and he does, which is why he eventually becomes a star too, because you have two movie stars in it. And I don't think you there's definitely attempts at that now where it's kind of like let's let's put whatever actor in this and kind of like let them try to, you know, cook.
Yeah, there was
um
like that movie which I didn't see that had like Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney. I think that was a pretty naked attempt at like we're just gonna put two
yeah,
actors that people have
Two
goodwill
pretty
for.
people,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
and
but
then
you need
hope that they have chemistry. And it's like, well, you know, pretty is as pretty
yeah
does, but I mean, you need something more.
but yeah, but yeah, you need like you need that movie star, you know, gravitas to it. And um yeah, I don't know, I just I don't think you have a lot of that anymore, and it's partially because the industry doesn't support it, um, but it's also because we just don't have movie stars. You know, like just because everybody, you know, knows Chris Pratt from like Avengers and Jurassic Park and things like that, or a lot of people know, um, you know, I'm trying to think of just like Margot Robbie from like Barbie and Wolf of Wall Street and other movies. Like I don't think they're like they don't have the same. They just don't capture like the screen all by themselves like
Yeah.
they're doing in this movie. If that
I
makes
have a little
sense.
bit of mixed feelings about that because the star system was like awful for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And in a way, like it reminds me of like you know, certain like periods in like the music industry or like things like that too, where you basically like farm people and just like leave a
Mhm.
trail of bodies so you can get these like exalted, like, you know, charisma, you know, concentrated people. And, you know, you know, Joan Crawford herself is kind of on the receiving end of a lot of that at times. Um, and I don't know, like I'm not sure if overall it's a good thing or bad thing for like us as a society, but like the results are the results in terms of like when it works and like 100% is working here. And cuz like when Clark Gable walks onto the the screen, or Betty Davis, or not, excuse me, not Betty Davis, Joan Crawford doesn't really have an entrance moment so much as she's just always there, and like they are like truly magnetic. And even I didn't realize that Clark Gable was her co-star until he walked into the thing. Like I kind of thought this was going to be a Now Voyager type situation, except with Joan Crawford, in the sense that we were going to watch this kind of picaresque, like her, you know, going around
Mhm.
to different things. But like the instant that Clark Gable shows up, like A, I'm like, oh, it's Clark Gable. But B, like he just commands the screen in a way that you're like, oh, he must be, you know, important. And it makes the story beats make a lot more sense than they might have otherwise. Because we like skip over all the courtship stuff, right? We have that like,
Mhm.
you know, montage of years, or cut to another year. So like all the stuff that should be like building our investment in the relationship is not present in the movie in a traditional way. It's simply like these stars have chemistry on screen, and that's all the explanation you really need for why they want to be together. And that's kind of magic.
Yeah, I think one of the things that real quickly that it also comes from. Yeah, I agree. Like the star system was not good. I think though that like the reason you get these performances is because like you were saying earlier, Grace, like she has similar roles in like 6 to 8 other movies, and so it's kind of like a reps thing. It's like you've done enough reps of the, so like
Yeah.
when you get to this, it's just like, yeah, I can kill this for you. Like I can really nail it. I think that kind of just today, um it's less churn and burn, which is a good
Yeah,
and bad thing, but it
well,
also
Yeah.
but it
Studios
also
just aren't
loses
making
the
as
studios,
many movies either.
they
yeah
make them so quick, the turnaround. I
Yeah.
mean, they film these in weeks, over hour, I mean, not hours, over days, but like these are there's a interesting sort of professionalism and capitalism to it, to just get them out as quick as possible, make as much money, make as much as we can, as much money as we can. And we need the names, we need the chemistry to draw it, to get the people butts in seats.
Mhm.
And again, too. Like,
yeah so yeah, it's I don't know if it's good or bad. It's more just like that's just the difference.
Yeah. It's a bygone era, and you can feel that it's bygone because you can sense the absence of it.
Yeah, it's also bygone because, like I said, these two are like some hot chemistry. You don't got that anymore because everybody, the non movie stars are all sexless. So what are you gonna do?
totally. I also think, like, thematically, like, nobody's touching subject matter like this. I mean,
Yeah. When's the last prison abolition movie that was like an MGM feature?
yeah, like to like where it's like to deal in something so mature outright, and to treat its audience intelligent, like the visual storytelling throughout, like in the back of Al and Marion's fight, there's a couple fighting, so it's like you get the sense like, okay, that's one life, and then she sees the next. Like it treats, like, it doesn't just like spoon feed us everything we need to know. It just assumes that like we can follow a story and root for these characters, and
Yeah,
you know
you
treats us
know,
like informed
I just,
adults.
we're just asking for more comedies, studio comedies that include prison abolition. That's is that too
Now we
much to
did we did
ask?
get Bottom. I'm pretty sure
Hotties,
Bottoms
hotties
mentioned.
for yeah,
Yeah,
hotties for prison abolition. We
it's
need that.
nice.
Hmm.
That's just a reason to go see Bottoms.
Yeah.
Um, well, cool.
Possessed bottoms.
Nice. Um, well, Possessed, I would say you can find it online. It's technically online. I had to rent it from Amazon for $4, but so it's a little tough to find. But I don't know. I think if you're kind of coming along with us, it's definitely worth a watch. But yeah. But that will wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at handle @cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/cinematary, where we list the movies that we talked about in this episode. Be sure to head over to cinematary.com. We talked about Zone of Interest earlier. Andrew and I, our reviews from TIFF are online if you want to kind of go through that. A lot of those movies have come out, like American Fiction, The Holdovers, Zone of Interest, but a couple that are still, making their way or kind of were underseen. It's worth seeing those as well. But yeah, if you would like to support the podcast and the stuff that we're doing, head over to patreon.com/cemetery and give us a nice little thing to make things happen. Thank you to our
Pay our
patrons.
rent.
Yeah, pay our rent.
We could be your kept woman. We could be your Joan Crawford. Be our Clark Gable, our Mark
yeah,
Whitney.
be our Mark Whitney. Come on, guys. Thank you to our patrons, Cam, Ron Hayes, Tanner Huskins, Teresa Marsathi, and Tyler Chandler. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Next week, we're gonna be continuing our Betty and Joan series with 1950s All About Eve, which is the only one of the movies that out of the series that we were going to do that I had seen prior. So I'm excited to come back to All About Eve and see Betty Davis again.
Did you miss her?
Yeah, it's nothing against Joan, but it's like, we started with Bette. It's been a minute. Until then, thank you all for listening. We will see you next episode.